So this is perfect. All right. Good evening. This is the demand-driven MRP PDM for March 2025. And I would love to present our renowned speaker today, Bruno Acosta. He is a senior supply chain consultant and co-founder of SAPICS. He has over 31 years of experience in supply chain, business processes, SCOR model, ERP systems, MRP, DDMRP, DDOM, S&OP, DD-S&OP, ASNOP across several industries such as automotive, aerospace, OEM, and MRO, as well as pharmaceuticals. Bruno has provided consulting services and training for global companies like Eaton, Bon, Kellogg's, Safran, Samsung, LG, and Coastal. He's a master instructor for APICS, CPIM, CSCP, and the Band-Driven Institute, DDPP, and DDLP. He also teaches the entire CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, SCOR P courses, and has developed Latin American instructors enrolled in the instructor development program. Bruno collaborates with several chapters and ASCM partners. He's the former president and founder of APICS Querétaro chapter, and he also was part of the board of directors of the APICS Terra Grande district for 12 years. So without further ado, welcome, Bruno, and all yours.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you everybody to join us. I appreciate Michael invitation, so I really appreciate Michael. So let me start sharing my my screen. I have just sent a request for allowing me to share, Johanna. So
I just accepted it, so it should.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me see if I can share it now. All right. So please confirm that you are seeing my screen and hear me well.
Yes.
All right. So this is a DDMRP introduction. Please feel free to interrupt whenever you consider. If you have any doubt or something, we can address it during the presentation. And if you consider that it is going to take longer, we can hold it. But because at the end of the session we have a question and answers. We have allocated a lot of time for doing it. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting us, and I'm really happy to share with you all these topics. Johanna has already helped me to present. I just want to share with you that I am part of the APICS community since I think 1999. I think that was my when I joined APICS, and I was a founder member of the APICS Querétaro chapter that later it became the CPICS authorized consulting partner. And I've been involved with the Demand-Driven Institute since I was a follower of the TOC. My first certification was the JONA. I obtained the JONA certification in 2001. So that's when I became the crazy guy that was speaking all the times about TOC, and at the times gave me the let's say the privilege of bringing all these topics to Mexico and share it with some of the members of the APICS community while we were working with the Terra Grande district. Right, have been recognized by the Demand-Driven Institute for the last 8 years as part of the top 10 instructors, and I think that I was one of the first that bring the demand-driven courses to Mexico. So I think that was Homer was saying that I was pioneering this in this topic, right? I have been volunteering for many APICS subcommittees like the IDP, and also for developing chapters and many others, even for SCOR, right? So let's start. Let's go to the topic that we were discussing today. And I am just to provide you with a quick review of the story of the MRP. The MRP was an algorithm that was created in the earlier 50s by, I'm a little bit nervous, so I apologize about that. Joe Orlicki. Joseph Orlicki created the algorithm in the early 50s, but at that time there was no room for running an MRP, so it should wait until the 60s. Let's say by 1964, I think that was the first time that was an MRP was run by Black and Decker, I think, and later it started evolving, and then by the 70s, the algorithm was improved by involving the ability to validate the capacity, and we call it in that case the MRP closed loop. Later in the 80s, we increased the capabilities of the model, or in this case of the algorithm, and it became a model. And in that time, we call it the manufacturing resources planning, the MRP2, and then it has a boom, right? But there was a problem. There was a big problem in the last decade of the last century. In the 90s, the problem was that all the systems that were created by using all this technology was not able to go through the next century, right? Do you remember the Y2K project, where all the companies were involved in changing their systems, because the last day of the century was not, that was, let's say, December 31st, 99, and the next day will become the 1st of January the 1st of 00. In that case, that 00 will mean 1900, right? So in that case, we were returning, coming back 100 years in the system. So that was the reason why all the let's say that decade was very, very impressive for the implementations. I think that in that decade was the biggest how do you call it, the conferences in APICS, right? Even I think that the president of the United States was part of those the presentations, right? So and the reason why that they created the concept of the ERP was because there were a huge opportunity for doing business with systems, and all the competitors, all the software producers of software developers were having the opportunity to win the orders from the customers. So in that case, they decide to increase the capabilities of the MRP2, and they start improving by adding up, for example, human resources module, logistics module, even, let's say, research and development. So in that case, that system could not be continue being called the MRP second, right? So in this case, they should change the name for the enterprise resources planning, right? But in the heart of all these, let's say, improvements and changes, all the time the MRP was in the heart of this, right? Later, in 2011, that was the first time that the concept of the actively synchronized replenishment, the ASR, appeared. And you can find it, you can find for the first time this concept in this book. I don't know if you have already seen this book before. In the Theory of Constraints, this is a book that was built by practitioners and was approved by Ellie Goldrich that time. And you can find in I think it's the chapter 12, where you can find a section that is called that way. They're going to be that the actively synchronized replenishment, the ASR, appeared for the first time. Later, I think that it was in 2015. It was when it was called demand-driven MRP, because the first let's say when it appears formally on a book was when Carol Patak and Chad Smith were asked for producing the third edition of the material Orlicki's material requirements planning book, right? So the third edition of that book was where the concept appeared for the first time officially. Later, the concept of DDMRP was created by the 2015, right? The 2015, right? So let's see and review what the MRP does, right? So what the MRP does is a kind of synchronization by using the bill of materials. Maybe not all the audience be aware of this, but MRP looks for the bill of materials, and it will start synchronizing from the top to the bottom by recognizing all the branches that are created. And there is something that the MRP needs to work properly, and is how long into the future it has to look for, right? For information. And that is achieved by recognizing the longest path on a bill of material. So if we add up all the manufacturing lead times and the purchasing lead times, and then we compare all of them, we are going to recognize a concept that is called the cumulative lead time. So in this case, when I compare this, that is 9 days of purchasing, 2 days of manufacturing, plus 1 day of manufacturing, it equals 12 days, against 10, against 98, and against 14, and against 11. The biggest one, the highest value, is the one that defines the minimum amount of time that I have to see in order to provide a good plan, or provide a good information for exploding and doing all the calculations in the MRP, right? So please keep in mind this, right? So something that we have to recognize is that MRP says, I recognize that this is an item that has independent demand, but the rest of them has dependent demand, right? There are some exceptions, right? Because some items are being sold as a spare part, so they can maybe have also independent demand, right? But let's say, talking about the ones that are not, they all will be considered dependent demand. And we all will say that independent demand is forecasted, and dependent demand is calculated, and it is calculated by our MRP. Excuse me. All right. So what the MRP does? The MRP does this. Once that we receive, in this case, for example, an order from a customer, the MRP it's doing this. It's let's say, exploding and calculating all the requirements by saying, oh, if I need this level, that is the independent demand, then I have to go down, and they'll say on all the levels, and then I have to pull all the materials from the suppliers, and then I have to bring them in order to deliver the product. And that will be very great just if the customer were willing to wait for all this time. If the customer were willing for waiting for 98 days, in this case, for receiving its product, or the product, that'll be wonderful, right? But let's say, what about when the customer is willing to wait nothing? So when the customer is willing to wait for just for receiving immediately the product, we have to implement, let's say, a different environment. I'm going to start by saying, for example, that if the customer is willing for wait nothing for the product, we have to implement a made-to-stock environment. What does it mean? It means that we have to keep inventory just in front of the customer, but because when the customer comes and asks for a product, in this case, we must deliver it immediately, right? So in that case, that is the activity that should occur when we receive an order from the customer. So in this case, we have to say, all right, I need to calculate how much inventory do I have to put in place, right? Like in this case. But since I have no orders before this, I have to start bringing the materials by using a concept that is called the MPS. All right, so the master production schedule, that it's the meaning of this is an accumulation of inventory waiting for the actual demand. All right, so in this case, we can say that the inventories that we are keeping here that are being decoupling the time from the customer that is willing to wait for the material, it is filled with the MPS. That is basically it is forecast driven. The forecast is driven this calculations in order to say how much do we have to keep here. But the problem arises when, for example, we calculate this amount and the customer says, okay, I have an order of this size, but you have only inventory of this size. So in that case, we are just in trouble, right? Because we have no opportunity to satisfy that size of the order, right? So in that case, we have to do whatever we have to do in order to bring the material as much or as quickly as possible. And then we will be able to satisfy it, but not all the times the customers are willing for wait for all these lead times, right? So maybe we're all gonna face some customer service problems. That is some of the problems that we have. But the reason why of this is what we are gonna analyze. So then we're gonna say, okay, in order to avoid facing these kind of problems, we have to start looking into the future of what the customer wants. So in this case, we implement our capability for forecasting, that we are saying, we are guessing what is the customer wants in the future. And why not in the near future? Why? Because in this case, we have to wait for all this time in order to bring the materials, right? So in this case, we're gonna be looking for the exact same time that we have already reviewed, that is our cumulative lead time. Then we have to project this into the future, and then we call it to this amount of time, we call it, and we define something that is called our planning time fence. And during the planning process, we are not looking for this that is behind this. We are looking for this. So in this case, if we have 1980 days of cumulative lead time, we're going to be looking for what the customer wants in 98 days into the future, right? Why? Because in this case, what we are looking for is by recognizing what is the cumulative time, then we are going to establish our minimum amount of site into the future that will allow us to plan correctly. Why? Because in this case, I need to see what is the customer wants in the following 98 days, because if what the customer wants in 98 days requires us to deliver in that day, but since my finished good has a manufacturing lead time of 1 day, I will need to deliver the product here, but I need to order or place an order of this finished good one on a day prior to this. So in this 97, I have to place the order, the manufacturing order for me in this case. But in order to be able to produce this, I have to receive the sub-assembly A on the day 97 in order to start producing this. At the same time, I need the same day, the 97th day, the sub-assembly B. And in this case, I have to synchronize these arrivals on day 97. And since this has 2 days of manufacturing lead time, I have to place an order, a manufacturing order, because this is manufactured, and on day 95, and in this case also on day 95. And then I have to start synchronizing behind, right? So in this case, I'm going to concentrate on the longest path. So I'm going to say, I will need this material on day 95. So in order to receive it here 95, I have to place an order 3 days before. So on day 92. And in order to transform this product from this material, I have to receive this on day 92, and I have to offset the requirement by placing an order on day 90 in order to start producing and transforming this material. But I will need this raw material 3 on the day 90. So 90 days prior, I have to release an order, a PO, on day 0. So today I have to release an order in order to be able to satisfy this order that I am seeing on day 98, right? So what I am saying? What I am saying is that I need to guess, because normally we have no information regarding the actual orders in this time, because we have only actual orders in the frozen zone that is defined by our demand time fans, because in this case, that is where the customer is providing us with some visibility. And since we have no visibility in this section, in this side of the slushy zone, we have to guess it. We have to forecast it, right? So in that case, we have to use this crystal ball in order to figure out what is the customer is willing to order. And then we'll have to start doing the explosion by seeing, building an MPS, and then saying, what is the customer is willing to order, since we have to start buying today, because otherwise we wouldn't make these numbers, right? So in that case, we are creating POs that are forecast driven. So those POs are forecast driven. These work orders are forecast driven, since they are being managed by using this piece of information, right? I think that it is clear now, right? Now, what is the problem with this? The problem is, and I am gonna ask for all the CPIMs, all the CSCPs, what are the 4 basic forecasting principles? Do you remember them? What they are? Which they are? What is the first principle? The first forecasting principle?
Forecast is always wrong.
Forecasts are always wrong, right? The second one. Forecast should come with an expectation of the size of the error, right? Let me see, size of the error. So what the second principle says is that we may expect, for example, an amount, a number, but the second principle says that it may be higher or lower. That makes our forecast not a number, but a range. And we are not using forecast as ranges. We are using forecast as numbers. The third one, the third principle, it says that forecasts at aggregated levels are more precise than the ones that are in detail, right? So what we are saying is forecasts at detail level are worse than forecasts at aggregated level, right? So in that case, we are not using, since we are planning at the item level, we are using detailed forecast, and those are the worst. Detailed forecasts are worst, right? Are wrong. And the fourth principle says that the further in the future, the bigger the error, right? So in this case, if we consider that we are looking into the future and we are using this piece of information in order to manage and releasing our orders that they are going to be coming 98 days later, so that piece of information that we are using as a number is the one that we are exploding. We are calculating our POs, and then that is what we are bringing here, and it won't change, right, during that period. But normally we are updating our forecast, so our forecast can, let's say, being updated and can be going down or up, but at the end, when they became an actual order, they may be smaller than the ones that we consider as 98 days ago, right? Or when we consider this value, maybe we are updating our forecast, and then they are rising, and later, 98 days later, may they become very big numbers against the ones that we compare 98 days ago, right? So what is the problem that we have here? We have a problem because since we place orders against our forecast in our cumulatively time, at least, then those orders, when they arrive and we compare this against the actual demand, we can see this. We can see that maybe this would be higher than the actual demand. And in this case, we are going to have extra inventory, excess inventory, or maybe even we can fall on a place where we will have obsolete inventory because it won't flow in the future, right? Or in the other case, when the forecasts were rising, and then we recognize that it is higher that we were receiving, we're going to be, let's say, in very low levels of material, or even in we were going to fall in stockouts. We call it to that let's say, to that effect, this effect, we call it the bimodal distribution. Bimodal distribution is something that 98% of the companies are reporting that they are facing. And they are very, very, let's say, very let's say, I don't know how to say it, but they are saying on a different way. They are not saying, I have a lot of excess of inventories and I have few inventories. They say, okay, guys, we have to improve our customer service, and also we have to improve our inventory turns. That is the way that they are facing, or they are saying this, right? That it's a contradiction, because in this case, when they are saying we have customer service problems, what is the reason why? Because we are having customer service problems. That is why, because we have no inventories, right? So in that case, we have to increase inventories. And in the other objective, that when they are saying we need to improve our inventory terms. Okay, if, for example, if we have 30 days of inventory, then we are having, let's say, 12 inventory terms annually, right? So if we reduce the inventory to 15 days, we are going to have now 24 inventory terms. So improving inventory terms means we have to decrease inventories, right? So we are saying we need to increase inventories, but also we need to decrease inventory. So what? Okay, if we were not aware about this, we can say, okay, are you crazy? But they are not. What they are saying is, we recognize that we have a lot of things that we don't sell, and we have things that we are selling that we have no inventories. That is the main effect of being forecast driven. What is what we would have to face? We would like to be in the, let's say, in the optimal range of inventory, but we have very, very few items that are in the optimal range. Why? Because the only thing that could happen in order to make this happen is that the forecast do not change along the time, right? If the forecast would not change during this planning period, in that case, we may be right here. But since the forecast is wrong always, we always will be or in this side or in this side. All right. So what is what we would like? We would like to be just in the middle, just in the optimal range. And that is what the DDMRP is helping us to do. We the ASCM, we recognize that the DDMRP is a best practice, is documented in the SCOR model as the best practice 179, and this has been recognized, that has been proven, has proved that has been providing benefits to the companies. And what are the steps of this methodology? This methodology has 5 steps for being implemented. The first thing that we have to do is we have to position. Position means that we have to recognize that not all of the materials that we have in the bill of material are, let's say, strategic. Some of them they are, but some of them they are not. So position means that we have to recognize what are those positions that are strategic, and strategic means that we have never have zero inventories in those positions. Those positions will always hold inventory because they are going to run a specific function that will help us to achieve our goals, and also to reduce lead times, and also to absorb variability, but also to decrease our need for looking into the future as we were doing before, right? I'm going to explain it later. After positioning, then we're going to protect those positions. We're going to call these positions decoupling points. Decoupling points is the let's say the name of those positions that will be always holding inventories. We're going to protect those decoupling points by using buffers. Buffer is not a synonym of safety stock, right? So I'm going to try to explain it and make the difference between them. But the buffer is the mechanism that will be protecting the decoupling points, all right? So in the second step, we're gonna be calculating the levels of these buffers. And then since the demand is not flat and we are not always facing exactly the same things, we have to recognize that we need to dynamically adjust these positions. So in that case, we need to make the buffer bigger or lower depending on the information that we have, all right? Later, we're gonna divide the planning and the execution into two different steps. We're gonna do a pull system by planning first, and there is where one of the main let's say changes when doing the calculations occurs. During this phase, the demand-driven planning, and you're gonna see how it works. We use something that is called the net flow equation in order to decide if we have to place an order or not. And then the execution is now split. It's put it away from the planning, and the execution, it's gonna be pulling too, but in a different way. We're gonna pull not by placing orders. We're gonna pull orders that were previously placed by the fourth step, by providing all the, let's say, the priorities based on colors and percentages. We call it, in this case, planning priorities and execution priorities. That is what we're going to see here. And how does it work? It works this way. Once that we have already recognized our bill of material, and we have already recognized what is the longest path that we call it the cumulative time, we have to start applying some criteria that will allow us to decide where should we place the inventory. And when we say where, those places will always be holding inventories. So instead of seeing an empty bill of material, we're gonna see something like this. So it means that we're gonna hold inventories right here, inventory right here, inventory right here, and inventory right here, right? So in this case, I will ask the audience to help me to recognize that since in this case, the longest part of these branches of the bill of material defines our planning horizon. In this case, what happens when I have inventories right here and right here? When an order arrives for this finished good, what is the time that we are going to use for responding to that order when we have inventory here and inventory here? Look at this. We use 2 days for manufacturing this item, right? And we use 1 day for manufacturing this item. So I have no more time for adding up. I have to only add up these two manufacturing lead times in order to calculate the lead time for delivering the product, the finished good, to the customer, right? So once that I receive an order from the customer, the time that I will take for responding will be just 3 days. I will respond in 3 days to the customer. Then I will consume these positions. And when those positions reaches their, let's say, their replenishment point, they will place orders for these specific materials. And then they are going to be treated the same way as we did in the classic MRP, right? We're going to explode, but not from the top to the bottom. No, we're going to explode only when it is necessary, because in this time, if an order arrives and it consumes this material, these materials, we build the product, we deliver the product. But in that case, those buffers are in a color that means you don't have to order, that is the green one. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to continue exploding the bill of material, right? So once that, let's say after 1, 2, 3, 4 orders, then this buffer gets out of the green zone and it turns yellow, then it will say, I need to place an order for the subassembly A in order to replenish this material. So in that case, it will be exploding until this point, and we'll create a PO for this. This will create a replenishing for this material. This will consume this material. This will replace the material in how many days? In the longest path. It says, we're going to say 2 days plus 8 against 2 days plus 3. This is 5. The longest path is in 10 days. So in 10 days, I will replenish this material. Okay. We call to this new lead time, that this, instead of calling cumulative lead time, we call it decoupled lead time, right? So the decoupled lead time will define the size of this buffer. And as you can see, I have no need for, in this case, for using a forecast in order to place an order for this material, because the actual demand is pulling this material and is making this buffer to drops until a zone that replenish that creates orders, and then it pulls the material from the supplier. It pulls the material from the other buffer, right? And then this new buffer, when it reaches, let's say, its level of replenishment after, let's say, 2, 3, 4 orders, then it will place an order for this subassembly D, and then it will be exploded for creating the POs for these raw materials. And as we can see, now these POs are not forecast driven. Now these 2 POs or this manufacturing order are demand driven, because this actual demand that is pulling the materials is now being, let's say, have an echo from here to the rest of the bill of materials, right? That are now splitted. We now have created some specific segments of planning that are independent between each other. Now, these positions that are strategic, now they became positions for creating orders that in the past they were dependent demand or dependent positions. Now they are independent positions. All right. Now let me show you how it works by using the same example. So when an order arrives, in this case, that person shouldn't come to this place to bring in the materials. It should come to this because there are material right here, and then it comes back and then deliver. So we reduce the lead time, but also take a look. Since we reduce the lead time that we used in order to deliver the product, we also reduce the need for looking into the future. So this is our newest, we call it decoupled lead time. Then we have to look into the future in the same amount of time. We have to look just in the future, just with this. So by designing, we're gonna design this by placing the buffers that equals the period where we have just actual demand. So that fits our demand time fence. All right. So does it make sense to you? Just give me a sign, please, that we are all that you are following me, right? Okay, are you okay? That is the way that the demand-driven MRP works. So in this case, we can see that we're gonna return very quickly to the customer, right? So just imagine that in that case we are running or we are trying to run, and not in this case a sub-assembly that could be considered, let's say, a assembly to order, right? So in this case, we are moving to a make to stock. So if a make to stock is being in place, so the demand will be arriving right here. We're gonna deliver from here, and until the buffer reaches its yellow or red position, it's gonna be reordering and pulling the materials from the previous position, strategic position, and it creates a segment of planning. When this position that is independent from this position or this segment is independent from this one, and this one is independent from this one. And there is something more that I would like to tell you. Buffers are not just on-hand positions. A buffer requires us to define an on-hand amount, but also an on-order amount. So in this case, for example, the buffer is not this. The buffer is this. This is the buffer. A buffer, when we calculate a buffer, it will tell us how much inventory do we have on hand. It will tell us what will be the maximum, what will be the minimum, what will be the average, the target inventory, but also it will tell us how many orders should we have in these 90 days lead time. How many orders there must be there? What is the distance between all the orders? That will tell us by the buffer. The yellow zone of the buffer will be represented by this material that is coming. We call it on order. So the buffer is all this. Okay. You get it? Any question related to this? No? All right. So how should we see the bill of materials from this point of view? We should see it like this. This is the finished good. We have no inventory at this level. So in this case, when an order arrives, it has to explode until this level. It will pull material from this position. This have to pull material from the things that we have in place right here. So we don't have to go or go deeper because we have it right here in the hand, right? So in this case, this will be pull, and that's it. So when those positions are falling into the replenishment position, they will place order for this one. It is going to be exploding this section. It is going to be, in this case, pulling the material from this other buffer, and then it's going to place an order for the supplier. And as we can see, they are, let's say, different, let's say, smaller bill of materials that are being considered, in this case, independent from the rest of them. And one more thing, in the case, for example, of even if I were working with a make to stock, or in this case, assembly to order, I will use a forecast. I can use a forecast, not for exploding the bill of materials, but for calculating the size of these buffers. That is the way that I am going to use the buffer, the forecast, excuse me. The forecast is going to be used in order for anticipating, for example, promotion, for anticipating seasonality, okay? Or even we can use some parameters instead of using forecast. We're going to call it, for example, let me try to remember the names in English. In English, it is, we can use demand adjustment factors. Demand adjustment factors or zone adjustment factors that will affect these positions in order to be prepared for knowing events that are coming into the future. That is part of the configuration that comes in the third step, the dynamic adjustment. So we will use the forecast. Someone has said, no, the Mandarin says that the forecast, we have to throw it out of the garbage, right? No, forecast is a very good piece, but we are not using the forecast for exploding and creating orders. No, we use the forecast in order to dimension in time the size of the buffers, right? So that is the way that we should do it. Okay?
So Bruno,
this
is Michael Jones. So when you have a buffer down maybe level 1 or level 2 in the bill of material, and that's common to many end items, then what you need to take into consideration the forecast for where it's used.
Yes, they may use, or even we don't only have to use only the forecast, because maybe this material is being used in this finished good. But what about if this material is used in, let's say, another 50 finished goods?
Yes.
Right. So in that case,
yes,
that is a strategic position that could never be empty, never. And in that case, maybe we can have its own forecast, right? Because in that case, since it is being consumed by several, or even we can use it exactly the same concept, but for the distribution center. So instead of using, let's say, segments of production or transformation, we can use it for segments of the delivering for a distribution network, not only for bill of materials. We can use exactly the same concept for the distribution side. right?
So you're saying you treat it like an independent demand item?
Absolutely, absolutely. All of them are independent, and they are mechanisms for creating and placing orders once that they recognize that they need to do it. Those are independent positions.
Well, so what do you do when your customers tell you they have some large outsized orders coming in the future, you know, where it would be very different than history, and you need to position your raw material in anticipation of those big, large orders that are coming?
What we are seeing, what we are expecting is we're considering the forecast, but not as the only source. What we are going to be doing is we're going to be, let's say, tracking the history. Let's say we will define an amount of the history, and we can also, we'll be looking into the future, and we will say, okay, let's calculate our buffers, not only on what is expecting to happen, but we will use the history, because we are saying we are consuming at this time, I'm going to say something, 10 pieces per day, but we are expecting that we are going to be in the future, let's say, using 25 pieces per day. So in that case, we're going to calculate a parameter that is very important for the calculation of the buffer, and then we're going to blend them and saying, okay, I'm going to provide, let's say, 40% of the weight to this value and 60% to this, or in the other side, on the other opposite, right? 40% only for the forecast, and I will provide 60% of the weight to this value. And I'm going to calculate a new value that will help me to calculate the size of the buffer. But I will not ordering yet. The only time that I am ordering is when I receive the actual orders. Actual orders are the only ones that are going to be, because let's say that the customer is providing this, let's say, information, right? That they're saying, oh, big orders. But once that they orders are coming, they became very, very small orders. So those are the ones that we are considering just for deciding if we are going to release or not orders. We're going to be feeling. We are going to be feeling if this that is in the demand time fence in the frozen zone, in the demand time fence in this frozen zone, that is the only part that we're going to be considering for deciding if we are going to order or not. Even if the size of the buffer it is bigger or not, because the only thing that we're going to use is this. So maybe this became true, but in that case, we don't have to worry about this, because remember, the only thing that we will have to wait is for this, because we are pulling just from these positions, not from these positions of raw materials. So in this case, if these orders are just affecting this one is the one that is going to be, let's say, acting against this. If we are feeling that the demand is higher, then it will immediately turn into a bigger buffer, right? And also, if this feels that the demand is bigger, that came from this, that is bigger, that it was prepared, it's going to be immediately will start growing up. Let's say not doing very big changes, right? It's going to be start growing up until it matches the actual demand. Or in the opposite side, right? If the demand is very small and it's smaller than I prepared, so in that case, the buffers we're going to turn very small buffers, because they are.
So the buffer is dynamic then? It changes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's a formula that does that?
Yes, it is. It is based basically on the decisions of the parameters. And instead, and that is very important, because instead of using master production schedules, now we don't use master production schedules. That means accumulation of materials waiting for the actual demand based on the forecast. No, we don't use this. Instead of using MPS, we use now master settings. And those master settings are relevant parameters that define the sizes of the buffers.
Bruno, I think that Mike is trying to understand how you deal with a spike of demand.
You're
Something
gonna
that's
see it.
unusually large.
Right.
Yes.
Let me go to this point because I'm let's say consuming my time. So just let me
Bruno, I got a question.
Yeah,
Good
please.
timing. These what did you call them back on the master settings? You say is that by part number level? It's part of your item master.
There are two different. There are part level settings, and there are family or groups parameters. Because it would be crazy. Let's imagine that you have, for example, 95,000 buffers. It would be crazy to manage every single one. So in that case, we create 36 groupings or families. So we can manage only 36 different, let's say, parameters, so set of parameters. And maybe for some specific things, we can manage some itemized parameters, right? For example, like the average daily usage and the way that we calculate the average daily usage, the variability, for example, right? So, but in that case, normally we have the ability to manage it as groupings. That's why we define some profiles, buffer profiles. That's what we manage.
Okay, so does a company need different software to do this demand-driven MRP? You need a different software package.
Right, for let's say for complementing their let's say the planning softwares, they have to normally they have to implement we call it an add-on, but a good let's say a good news is that many of the ERPs now they are including the DDMRP methodology into their calculations, into their planning processes. The big ones have already done it.
So then you would specify that an item would be controlled by a buffer.
Absolutely.
Buffer versus
Absolutely.
what MRP or
Yes.
Okay.
And this is what we're gonna do. That's why we're not saying, oh, throw it out of the MRP. No, we need the MRP, but in a different way. Because in the past, let's say only let's say the finished goods are independent positions, right? And the rest of them are dependent positions, right? Now in the DDMRP, all the strategic positions, even if they are raw materials, intermediates, or finished goods or distribution items, that they are considered that they are strategic, they are going to be planned by DDMRP. But
Okay.
ones that they are not strategic, they are going to be planned by the traditional MRP.
Okay.
Right?
Very good.
So that's why we say that the methodology continue using the MRP, the DRP, lean manufacturing principles, theory of constraints, Six Sigma, and 4 innovations. I will try to explain the 4 innovations, but one of them is the concept of the decoupling time. Decoupling time is one of them. I'm going to show you the others. The fact is that we're going to focus on position, protect, and pull across these 5 steps that I have already mentioned them. The first one requires us to define which positions will be considered strategic. Then we're going to calculate the buffer levels and groupings, the profiles. Then we're going to do a dynamic adjustments. And then we're going to see the demand-driven planning. And that's where I would like to show you. I will skip some of the slides here because I would like you to see what are let's say, the main criteria for defining what are the positions that could be considered strategic. For example, the first one is, what is your customer tolerance time? If your customer is willing to wait just let's say 3 days, so your closer buffer should be 3 days away from the finished good, right? So that is one criteria. The second one is there a segment in the market that is willing to pay more if I could deliver it immediately? So in that case, if there is that at that market, so I should consider placing an order in the distribution system, or the closer to the customer, because they are willing to pay for that material, and at a higher, a premium price. The third criteria is the sales order visibility. So the actual orders, not forecast, actual orders could also define the size and the how far my first buffer should be in place. All right. Externally, we're going to consider the variability from the demand, but also the variability from the supply. So we don't want, let's say, for example, we don't want to face this kind of variability from the customer. In that case, we can define a buffer that equals the same of the size of the variability in order to absorb this variability, and avoiding that variability gets inside of the company, inside of the manufacturing. So in that case, this buffer will absorb this, and it will provide, let's say, a less variability that also will be increasing, but not on the size of this variability that could enter into the factory if the buffer were not there, right? But also it could happen from the size of the supplier, because if the supplier is, let's say, very, very unpredictable, so that problems would get inside of the company. So if we don't want the variability to come inside of the manufacturing or in the distribution center, we can put this buffer in order to absorb this variability, so we could face a smoother variability after the buffer, right? So that is what the buffer is doing with this, the external variability. But also all the points that we can leverage, as the example that I was providing. If I am using a raw material or an intermediate that is being used by, let's say, 1,000 finished goods, that is a position that is considered strategic, that you can never miss, because that position will allow you to cut your lead time and being faster when delivering, right? And also, the last one is we can use stock buffers in order to protect critical operations, bottlenecks, for example, or for protecting some very, very visible unstable operations, right? So these are the 6 main criteria. So in that case, we're going to see now different operating model that will look like this. We call it, to these buffers, stock buffers. They are not the only buffers that we manage. We manage three types of buffers. Stock buffers, where we also have time buffers and capacity buffers. And all of them allow us to create and define a demand-driven operating model. That is, let's say, the second step after implementing the DDMRP. So DDMRP is only the door to enter into the demand-driven world. Okay. So in this case, for example, for planning this operation, we have to consider the entire decoupled cumulative lead time. And in this case, when we place this order, we are splitting let's say, the company into pieces and smaller pieces that has been or will be facing smaller variabilities. They're going to be managed on an easier way, because in this case, if a component fails to arrive, all the system will suffer. And in this case, if a component did not arrive, only this section will suffer, right? But also the buffer should be, let's say, bigger enough or robust enough in order to be able to absorb that variability. And that is why the red zone of the buffer is not the same thing as the safety stock. Okay. And in this case, it's very highlighted that we have to highlight that MRP was never designed to decouple. That the MRP was always trying to net to zero, or if you define a safety stock, your safety stock is your newest zero, right? Safety stock, it must be, let's say, considered as a spare tire, right? Like the one that we have in the car, right? The buffer is not a spare tire. The buffer is now considered as a shock absorber that can allow us to go smoother, right? When driving. That is the equivalent on parts of the car. That will do that. So that is the buffer. The different zones that are the green zone, the yellow, and the red zone. will have a specific function, right? This one will define the size of the orders and the frequency of the orders. That's the green zone. The yellow zone will define the primary coverage. So that is what it should be coming to the position, the strategic position. It will define what should be coming in the pipeline or in the working process. The safety is what it is have to be able to absorb the variability, but on a different way, like the safety stock. The safety part of the buffer is for being used, not for not being used. Like in the, let's say in the safety stock system, we're considering the cycle stock by not touching the safety stock, right? The cycle stock will be trying to not touch it. But if it touches or consume it, it must create an order in order to replenish, even if it is one piece. And also, if you have some policies for ordering, let's say a fixed order quantity, just by consuming a piece of the safety stock, you're going to create an order for 100 pieces in order to replenish this safety stock, right? So that is why it is not the same thing, because in this case, if I enter to the red zone, but I still being in the green zone in the planning side, I am talking about here in the on-hand. If the on-hand drops into the red zone, but the planning side is in the green zone, I don't have to place any order. The red zone is for being used, not for not being used. And you're going to see it. I'm going to jump on this part, right? So that's what I've mentioned. The buffer has some groupal settings, but also have individual settings for being calculated, all right? So let me show you the biggest part, because my time is consuming, right? I will try to show this. I have already explained that the safety stock is not the same thing as the buffer, right? So let me just show you what is the way that the demand-driven planning works. I'm going to jump on this. All right, and this is very important for deciding if we are gonna place an order or not. We're gonna use. Let me just stop my clock, because it can consume 1 hour. So if you allow me to do it, I can continue. Could you allow me to continue with this?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, guys. So, all right. So in the planning side, we use something that is called the net flow equation. What is the net flow equation? The net flow equation should consider what is coming to us, what we have actually on hand, and what side in the demand side, what is the demand that I have to fulfill immediately, but also what is relevant demand in the future. That is, for example, spikes. Spikes are being part of this calculation. So in that case, we're going to consider actual demand, not forecast. So only actual demand, but on a span of time that we're going to consider order spikes horizon. In that order spikes horizon, if we detect that there is a spike, we're going to consider it, and we're going to make it part of the decisions. So it will work this way. The net flow equation will allow us to calculate the net flow position. And the way that we're going to use it is by using the on-hand plus what is coming to us, right? So what is being ordered. And then we're going to decrease these amounts by calculating the qualified sales orders. What are the qualified sales orders? All the back orders are part of the qualified demand, plus what used today, plus the spikes, plus all the spikes that we see in the plan, in the order spikes horizon. It's going to be now added up to this, and will decrease this availability. So let's see.
Bruno, is the spike a booked customer order?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
It is an order. Okay.
But it is not a normal order. You're going to see it now. So in that case, if our net flow position drops from the green zone and gets the yellow or even the red, then I have to replace for getting to the top of the green zone, right? We're gonna call it in this case top of the red, top of the yellow, and top of the green. If I drops from the top of the yellow, I have to replace until the top of the green. And let's see an example here. In this case, I have a buffer that has 52 units in the red zone, 70 units that are part of the yellow zone, and we have already calculated the buffer for 35 units in the green zone. What does it mean? Let me tell you. It means that I have to hold as a minimum 52 pieces on hand and a maximum of 52 plus 35. So in this case, my maximum on hand inventory should be 87. So my minimum inventory should be 52. My maximum inventory on hand should be 85, right? How many orders should I have in the pipeline? If I divide my yellow zone by the green zone, it says 70 divided by 35. It means that I have to have 2 orders. What size of the orders? The average orders should be the size of the green zone. So I should have 35 and 35. And what should be the distance between them? If I divide my green zone by the ADU, 35 times divided by 10, it means that there should be a distance of 3.5 days between them. So sometimes there will be 3 days away from them, or sometimes there will be 4 days between them. All right? That is what the buffer is saying, is telling me. And the buffer will work this way. In this case, I will define, since this is my visibility of firm orders, my customer is saying, I will provide you a visibility of 7 days in this case with firm orders. So in this case, this is my order spikes horizon. Now I will have to define an order spikes threshold. The threshold normally is set up by the 50% of the red zone. So in this case, the red zone is 52 divided by 2, it's 26. So every time that I see an order or a sum of orders that are bigger than 26, they will be qualified as demand, and they're going to be added up to what used today. That is the way that it is being used. So we're going to see that let's say the orders are coming from the suppliers or from the working process, and the orders from the customers are coming this way. So they're going to be moving this way, right? So let's do an example here and look at the way that it works. Day number 1. Remember these numbers, please. 52, 122, and 157, right? 52, 122, and 157, right? So in this case, I have on hand 65 pieces. I am planning to receive these 2 orders. Tomorrow I will receive 35, and in the next 6 days I will receive 37, right? So in this case, I have on order, I have 37 plus 35, they make 72, right? So I have 65 on hand, 72 coming, and I have 10 pieces that use only today. That is my only qualified demand, because in this case, I have no spikes in the next 7 days, all right? So my qualified demand is only 10. My net flow equation that will help me to calculate my net flow position, would say 65 plus 72 minus, it is plus 72 minus 10, it makes 127. Remember that this was 122. So 127 is over 122. So it is in green. Should I place an order? No. I shouldn't have placed an order because I'm in green. All right. So at the end of the day, from my 65 pieces that I have on hand, I have to deliver 10 pieces to my customer. So my inventory will drop to 55, right? So day 2. On day 2, I will start with 55 pieces on hand. Now 72 pieces are coming. These are the ones that are considered on order. Now I am calculating that I have to deliver 18 pieces plus, in this case, I am seeing a spike on day 8 of 30 pieces. So in this case, my qualified demand will be 18 plus 30. In this case, it makes 48. So my net flow position will be 55 plus 72 minus 48 equals 79. 79 drops below 122. So I'm in green, now I'm in yellow. I need to place an order. What is the size of the order that I have to place? Remember that the top of the green was 157, right? So in this case, if I am in 79, I have to place an order to reach the top of the green. So I have to place an order of 78, right? So if I place an order of 78, tomorrow I will see that it will appear here. At the end of the day, I have 55 at the beginning of the day, but I received during the day 35 pieces, and I issue 18 pieces. So at the end of the day, I will end up with the 72 pieces in on hand. Now, on day 3, I am seeing that I have 72 pieces on hand, plus what is coming, that is 78 plus 37, it makes 115, minus 17, plus, again, the 30 pieces that I have as a spike, so it is 47. So my newest net flow position equals 140. 140 are over 122, so I'm in green. I don't have to place any order, right? My on hand is 72, no receipts, minus 17. It will came 55 again, right? And I will continue doing this. And look at this, green. I haven't to place any order. Then next day I'm in green. I don't have to place an order. And look at this. On day 5, my on hand drops below 52. 52 is my minimum. So in this case, on the traditional system, we should place an order because we get below the safety stock if this were the case. The demand-driven MRP does not work that way, because since I am over the 122 that are my top of yellow, I'm in green, so I'm in good standing. I don't have to place any order, even when I am in the red zone in the on hand. Okay, so in this case, we don't have to place any order. Next day, we drop into the yellow zone. We have to place another order. Okay. So in this case, we have to place an order, and we are going deeper into the red zone. We place our order, and then look at this. Suddenly, when this spike arrives, the spikes is also coming to us. So in this case, when we let's say drain the buffer with this spike, we don't care, because in this case, even when we are let's say dropping, the size of the buffer, let's say, it's in good standing. Then we deliver the order. Then on the next day, we receive this spike. So the buffer is continue being in good health, right? In good standing. That is why we have to look as soon as possible if we have those spikes, because once that I recognize a spike in the demand, I have to create a spike in the supply side too, right? Any question, please?
Bruno,
Yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah.
How often do you recommend to adjust the buffer profiles?
Yeah, the buffer profiles, they are being calculated every single day. But the recommendation is you don't have to wait longer than a week for recalculating your size of your buffers. But those are the size of the buffers. There are another process that is called the demand-driven S&OP, and the demand-driven S&OP, it's a tactical process that will be receiving information from the demand-driven operating model that will be setting up and recalculating and defining all the aspects related not only to the buffers, to the stock buffers, but also to the other buffers, to the time buffers and the capacity buffers. But also by calculating, as we are doing this, by calculating all these buffers daily, it doesn't mean that you have to replace orders every single day, as we have already seen, right? So in this case, this buffer on day 8, it shouldn't place any order, right? So if I had, let's say, 45,000 buffers, it doesn't mean that every day I will place orders for all the items. No, I will place orders for the ones that reached the yellow zone, or even they dropped to the red zone, and they have to place orders. But we don't have to place orders for all the items that we have. And if I see, I will continue just very quickly doing this, and we will realize that at the end, please look at those two things. At the end, we will see this. We were expecting the inventory on hand to behave between the minimum and the maximum. Do you remember that the minimum was the 52 pieces and the maximum was the 87 pieces? So many times the on hand were here, but also sometimes they drop below into the red zone, because the red zone is for being used, not for not being used, right? So that is a very big difference. And if in this example, I see what were, let's say, the quantities that I have in my inventory, how my inventory were performing. For example, sometimes I were in 65 pieces, 55, 72, and I do a kind of a histogram. So I will look at this. I will never wear between 0 and 10 days, between 11 and 20. I will never. I will wear in between 30 to 40, and it is, let's say, not the bimodal distribution, but the normal distribution. We were not in this case like what is happening normally when we are driving by or being driven by the forecast. That is what you are expecting to receive. And I will show you. I would like to share with you what we can expect from this. Let me
Bruno, this
please.
is Tammy. I was just going to share in practice. What we did was your buffer status. Actually, we could calculate that multiple times a day to see where you are in your buffer. So I want to say 3 times a day, depending on your region. But we actually only calculated your buffer settings, which is what your buffer was, once a month, unless we have certain times of the year where we're volatile, and we would do a mid-month for a couple, but it would be like maybe 10 SKUs globally. But yeah, our buffer status, it gets calculated. For us, it was calculated 3 times a day. And then, but your actual buffer settings, you're right. Just like Bruno said, you don't, even then, I mean, you don't even have to adjust them that much. We had a rule if it was less than 5%, I want to say, maybe 10%. We didn't even touch them. We just let them go and let the system do what it needed. But does that help, Johanna? You're not actually making new buffers. Well, for us anyway, we were not making new buffers every day. We were checking our status multiple times a day.
Yeah, and I think also when I use it in the past, we used to use Intuit Flow, and with that one, we were really concerned about anything that goes beyond the top of green, because then, you know, if the sites are not executing properly daily, then those numbers just could get out of control. So, but no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Tammy.
Just remember, I will tell you something, and it brings me for thinking about the SCOR. SCOR says that every single supply chain solution should consider 4 dimensions: processes, metrics, skills, and best practices. So in that case, we should always have the right skills, because normally people, when we forgot about skills, the process will suffer, right? So we're always looking for that. This slide, let's say, resumes what is what you can expect. You can expect something like decreasing, for example, 30% or by 30s in overall industries. So in this case, a reduction of 32% is the average. An increase of a median of 30% in customer service by decreasing the inventory, by having less inventory and increasing the customer service, and also reducing your lead times by 22%. And I would like to share this, but that is a real case that we present last year in the demand-driven world. It is from a very big company. Maybe you're familiar with them. It is PPG, the Pittsburgh Painting Group. They are let's say, having operations all around the world. It's let's say, I don't know, I don't remember that the size of the company. That's a $17 billion company, and in their results, they reduced the obsolescence by 40%. They reduce also the raw materials by 30% and the finished goods by 44%, by increasing the level of customer service from 93 to 97, by reducing all this, because they were having this 93% but having a lot of inventory. Now they reduce all these inventories and they perform better, right? So they increase also the raw material services from 74 to 90. So this is an amazing case. They are actually doing these implementations in all the. We started in Mexico, but we have already rolled out into Colombia and also now in Brazil. So this is a very good let's say success case. And any of you that you will be in touch with this, he's Ricardo Irisca. He presented this case study in the demand-driven world in the last November in Frankfurt.
Thank you, Bruno. I actually, we're running out of time, but just the final question. Anybody has anything for Bruno before we wrap up this session?
Bruno, what kind of companies or industries can use this methodology?
Any company. It doesn't matter what size of a company. We have seen it in very big companies, small companies, automotive industries, food and beverages. No matter. It doesn't. It is not for specific size or type of industry. It is for every company that manages inventories.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bruno, for sharing all this presentation with us. This was amazing. And well, to all the attendees today, we're gonna send the survey tomorrow. So please let us know your thoughts, your feedback, and any other suggestions for topics for upcoming PDMs. So anything else?
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.